Here is AOC, and I don't know. I don't know what there is to say about the attack on her that I didn't, and the so-called squad that we didn't talk about during the interviews on Thursday and Friday. I mean, I think to a large extent, people seem largely really confused as to why Pelosi would go this hard. I mean, it's understandable on some level if you are jaded towards politicians and skeptical of them broadly, and even some skepticism of Pelosi. But at one point, it becomes hard to understand the logic even from her perspective, and that's the part that I find. I mean, I know why people do bad things and stupid things, but there is also. I want to say that it was on Crooked Timber, but I'm not sure. A writer, maybe it was Jonathan Schwartz, who, Tiny Revolution, maybe, I'm not sure, who had some type of iron law of institutions, which is that people would rather maintain their power within an institution even more than maintaining the power of the institution in and of itself. And that is not unique to Congress. That is not unique to anything. It's just institutions, groups. And it's quite conceivable that Nancy Pelosi, despite the fact that, the Seth Moultons of the caucus came at her and tried to run against her, they were quite easily dispatched. I think, and rightly so, Nancy Pelosi and many of her ilk see this generation, this younger generation of Congresspeople represented, if not directly, but illustrated by AOC and Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Ayanna Pressley and others who are, sort of like adjacent, but particularly those younger women of color are the future of the Democratic Party. In many respects, electorally, they're the present of the Democratic Party, and maybe that's why, in terms of leadership, these folks are the future. And I think it threatens Pelosi and her ilk, and at least in the context of this era, it definitely feels like Pelosi is not up to the differences of this era. They're just not aware of what's going on with their voters. It's just simply can't understand what they hope to gain of this. I understand the idea of like they're hoping to run out the clock. They're afraid of impeachment because it puts them on. But this is going just a little bit further than that. And I don't see how this is effective. I really don't. I mean, I know that there was an internal poll that supposedly showed that people in the industrial Midwest were not responding well to AOC and socialism, supposedly. But it is, and that may be the case, it may not be the case. But either way, even if I stipulate that that poll is accurate and it was delivered to us accurately, which I tend to be a little skeptical of, but even if I stipulate that, it still doesn't make any sense. Nancy Pelosi polls like crap in every single district in the entire country, and she has for a decade. And she certainly did going into the 2016 race. And that was exclusively about the House and the Senate. Exclusively about the House and the Senate. I mean, presumably, right? And Nancy Pelosi polled like garbage. And that did not implicate people voting. And she was the leader of the party. Now, it's true, Fox has done a great job in defining AOC. More Republicans are aware of her than Democrats. But the fact of the matter is that in 2020, the vote is going to be about Donald Trump. And the question is, are you going to give your base any reason not to vote against Donald Trump? Like, not just to vote for somebody else, but I mean, like, literally, are you going to give your base any reason to stay at home? Or are you going to make it a clear sort of choice that they're making? And that is to go out and vote against Donald Trump and not have any misgivings. Are you going to have an activated base? And activated people who stayed at home during 2016? I mean, that's really the question. We know that Trump's people came out as much as they were ever going to come out. They did not come out in 2018. Some Republicans had, I think, one of their best turnouts in a midterm as well. It's just Democrats went even further. And they did not, like, this is what it's going to come down to. How many people get to the polls, particularly in these states? And so it doesn't matter what somebody in Michigan thinks of AOC. It doesn't matter in terms of them not liking her, because the jump from there to I'm going to vote for Trump, where I otherwise wouldn't, is just very hard to understand. But it does if you want in Milwaukee more African-American turnout, if you want more African-American people of color turnout in Michigan, you best not crap on the people who are representing the interests of those people, who are speaking out on behalf of those people. Because then you start to wonder, if you're one of those people, it would be irrational otherwise. So, like, is this a party that's really in my interests, or even has the potential to be in my interests? Because anytime we get some voice in there that we appreciate, they get sidelined and attacked. More so than the people who even went after Nancy Pelosi. Remember, AOC voted for her. So I don't know. It's mystifying, and of course Donald Trump stepped in it, and we will talk about that in a moment.
Well, I think it's exactly what you said. She's more invested in preserving her power within the institution, and representing the interests that currently dominate the institution than the success of the institution itself. But I do wonder, like, if you compare what's happening in the Democratic Party right now with the progressive wing, the squad or whatever, to when the Tea Party took over the Republicans, AOC is playing it very differently by demanding to be included in this institution, right? Whereas I think the Tea Party was more openly oppositional to the Republican establishment. And I wonder if that's a good move.
I mean, I don't know. AOC may have been doing that, but she's doing that as a sitting congresswoman. I mean, Justice Democrats are, I don't know if they're going after all the blue dogs, but they are going out and they are primarying. Democrats. And that's, theoretically what the Tea Party did. I mean, the strategies aren't going to align because the dynamics are very different and the voters are different. The institutional support in terms of money. I mean, the Tea Party, thousands of buses showed up to bring them to rallies, and it was all paid for by the Koch brothers. There's just no equivalent, and so it's a different calculation. I mean, the fact of the matter is that Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham. Look at Lindsey Graham. Like, these are our politicians who have a different relationship with their base. And I don't know that the Democrats are ever going to have that because they're a much more diverse party, frankly. They just simply are. I mean, sheer numbers. And so there's too many, I think, different sort of like planes that intersect to make the Democratic Party, planes and groups of people, as opposed to Republicans, which starts off with, I guess, the advantage that they're 100% white.
Yeah, but don't you think one strength of the kinds of politics that these people represent is that it is more of a mass working class politics that can bring together diverse segments of the population?
That who represents?
AOC, Rashida Tlaib.
That they can bring diverse groups of people. Yes, no, I do think that's one of their strengths. But I'm just saying that the strategies are not going to align. The strategies of insurgents in the Democratic Party are not going to necessarily align with the strategies of insurgents in the Republican Party, because in many respects, the Tea Party, or whatever you want to call it, didn't have to take over the apparatus of the Republican Party, because the Koch brothers came in and they created one that was better. Like, they literally, remember those stories of the voter files? People weren't going to the party anymore for the voter files because the Koch brothers had developed a better voter file. Now, I don't know who's going to step in. Tom Steyer's not going to say, like, hey, guys, I'm going to give $100 million to the Justice Democrats, and they're going to create a voter file, and it's going to be better. And so it doesn't matter where you go to these guys. I mean, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. I guess it just seems kind of weird to me that you would come in, throw a bunch of bombs, primary Democrats, and represent policies that the centrist wing of the party hates and finds extremely threatening, and then act surprised that they are responding to you with hostility.
Who's acting surprised?
I mean, the way that AOC has been talking about this stuff, the way that the squad has been talking about it, it seems like they expect their policies and their actions to be more welcome than they actually are.
I mean,
I think this is just the fight.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm not sure that...
Is it a rhetorical stance that they're taking?
I would imagine some of that is. I mean, some of it is, I would imagine, is a rhetorical stance. I mean, it helps. You're trying to sort of like marshal your own forces, and so you make it look like you got cold cocked. But, we don't know what the relationship has been between them and Pelosi. We don't know that from looking in the outside. It could have been better or worse at different points. But, I mean, if I'm Nancy Pelosi and it's hard for me to put myself into her position. I don't have this power. I don't have the same relationship to wanting power, I think, that probably she does, which is why I'm not the Speaker of the House. But one could also imagine a scenario where we're going to co-opt the energy of these people and we're going to bring them into the tent and have them piss out instead of piss in.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems like there was an act. That's the thing that I'm very surprised about, is that I'm not surprised that there's not animosity. I'm not surprised that people feel threatened by them. I'm just surprised by the way they're going about it, because it's not terribly effective. You can feel threatened by people and react in a way that's more constructive to your own agenda in the long run. I mean, it's not like Nancy Pelosi is going to live forever, right? Like, I mean, I don't know how many more years she plans to be Speaker of the House, but
I think it's I don't know if it's that strategic. Like the way like Drew Hamill, Nancy Pelosi's chief of staff, and the other guy for Hakeem Jeffries tweeted this stuff out on Friday night. Like, it seems so petty.
So petty.
And not very strategic to me. Like, these are just small-minded, like, apparatchiks, like grasping on power.
Oh yeah, they're absolutely letting their hubris get in the way. Like, the smart thing to do would be to deny them the attention and deny them the news stories, because that's what they're running on, and that's how they're building a base, right? You could just say, oh, it's not a big deal, I'm not going to comment, we're working it out, instead of, being this much of a see you next Tuesday.
And oh geez.